Hello my loves, and welcome back to my channel. So as you can probably see by the title, for today's video we are going to be comparing two of the most popular flashcard making apps out there, which is of course Quizlet and Anki. Now I get so many questions on which one you should be using, which one is better, and also how I've decided that writing flashcards is the best revision technique out there. Trust me, gone are the days in sixth form where I used the most inefficient way of studying ever, which is handwriting my notes and then rewriting them hundreds of times, which has been scientifically proven not to be effective and also takes up so much time. So do not do that. Hopefully by the end of today's video I will have convinced you which app is the best to have all of your flashcards on and how you can scrap all of your notes and be like me and purely have all of your notes and revision on one resource and flashcards. And also make sure you stick around till the end of the video where I'm going to be giving you my top tips to avoid when you are making flashcards and the common things that people do wrong to make sure you can use flashcards in the most efficient way possible. So to do this, I've broken it into the most important categories for me when picking a resource, which first of all is the look of the software, creating the cards themselves, the learning experience, the accessibility of the app, and finally the workflow. Now in terms of the look of the two different softwares, I think this is one of Quizlet's big selling points and why people often end up on Quizlet over Anki is because it has a much more friendly user interface. Immediately when you go on it, the colours are really bright. You can make your own little profile, how to make folders and new cards and set everything up from the get-go is really simple, pretty to look at and easy to use, which ultimately when everyone first downloads an app is what they want. Now in comparison, when you open Anki, I know a lot of new users look at it and think, what on earth is this? When you first get it, it looks very 1960s kind of gaming style, isn't very friendly to look at and is very confusing. However, there are definitely a lot of settings you can find and use to make it look a lot prettier. One thing for me that breaks up all of the harsh text is putting in different emojis for your different decks, but it doesn't do it all for you, and from the get-go it is quite an unfriendly user face to look at. So I do think in this category Quizlet definitely has the advantage when it comes to what it looks like and the aesthetics of the resource. When it comes to creating the cards themselves, which is arguably one of the most important categories because this is what you're going to be revising from, and also how you make your flashcards from your lectures, which is one of my biggest tips, and I go into full detail about how I don't make notes at medical school and just make my flashcards from my lectures in this video that I will put up here. Anyway, Quizlet is very good at all of the basics. It makes it very simple to make your cards. It's very straightforward. You can add images, make things bold, and also if you do pay for the premium membership, which I'm going to go into some more detail later in the video about that and the comparison with Anki, you do get the option to make closed cards and also image inclusion cards, which for me at medical school are an absolute lifesaver. I use it to learn all of these diagrams and many more for anatomy. But a really cool feature is the import function, which if you have written a Word document or you're given a Word document, it automatically changes it into flashcards for you, which can be a really big time saver. However, all of that being said, when it comes to making the cards, Anki is a clear winner for me in this category. Not only do you have so many different card options for free, they also do new add-ons which are constantly being updated, and there is literally not a card style on here that you cannot get, and it all comes free with the software itself. You can make the backs of the cards look really intricate and detailed and embed images in different ways which you simply cannot do on Quizlet. And if you did want to import documents and get the cards made for you, there's a really cool app called Notion to Anki which does a very similar thing to the import function on Quizlet. Now when it comes to the learning category, they are both very, very different. Quizlet goes for a really fun interactive way of learning with loads of different functions and games, so you can do the mix and match, which is basically like Snap and a really fun way of learning. You can also use the test function, which basically sets up a mock exam for you, which for towards the end of exam season where you are literally so bored of revising and need some sort of motivation, these can be a really fun light way of doing things and are a really useful function to have. They've also recently introduced the achievements, which give you little badges for how many days you've been revising and how you've been doing, which can be really motivating, and I love having some sort of feature like this. Which brings me on to Anki, and their equivalent is the heat map. Now I am obsessed with the heat map, especially when I'm revising. Getting my little colours, seeing my little streak, I find so motivating. I mean, it is the bane of my life some days where I don't want to break my streak during exam season, but I'm shattered, but it is very motivating, trust me on that. And that is a free add-on that you can get with Anki. But one of the biggest advantages when it comes to learning is, of course, their spaced repetition algorithm. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of scientific research about spaced repetition to prove to you how good it is. Really is one of the most efficient ways to get a lot of information into your brain and keep it there. And the algorithm on Anki is simply like nothing else anywhere. You can actually edit the algorithm to make it fit around you and how often you forget things, so it is personally tailored. And how it works is you rate each card to whether you found it hard, medium or easy, and then it brings it up out of the deck for you to see a certain amount of days later to make it not slip off that forgetting curve. Another huge advantage when it comes to Anki is the search feature. Now this again is nothing like Quizlet. You can search for any key terms within your flashcards, and when you're using it as an almost note-taking style, it is so crucial for me to be able to bring up all of the cards with, say, liver failure on, because if I need to know about liver failure and don't want to go sifting it through all my different decks, I'm going to see everything there, and then I can edit them, change how often I'm going to see them, and just read all about liver failure by basically using it as a mini Google and a search engine through my notes. Now the next section is all about accessibility and how easy it is to actually get your flashcards on different devices, on your phone when you're on a busy train, and also most importantly how much this is all going to cost you. So let's start with Quizlet, and one of my big digs about it is to access all of the perks and ultimately the things that I do think you're going to need to use it in the most effective way is the premium membership, which is £31.99 a year. And if you're going to 5 years of medical school, that is quite a lot of money to fork out on a software. I hate subscription-based services because you always forget the following year that you're going to have to pay for it, and it does add up. However, either way, whether you do opt to get the premium membership or not, you can really easily access all of your cards and decks simply from the Safari, which means if, say, your laptop runs out of charge and you just want to go and use the library computers, you can get hold of them that way. And the mobile phone or tablet app is also really good. Again, it looks very user-friendly and the interface has been run really well and is really easy to use. Whereas Anki, unfortunately, is not quite that simple. Anki is free to download on computers and laptops like this one, and on here it is the best format in terms of laying out your decks, being able to easily access your cards. However, if you want to get it on a laptop or your phone so it is more portable, you do have to pay for Anki, and it is £24, which is, however, a one-off payment. However, on the negative side, I am not going to lie to you, I'm not a huge fan of the mobile version of Anki. I don't think it's very well designed. You can't really access your decks as easily. It's good if you just want to go through a few cards, but a lot of the features like the searches and the add-ons don't work as well on the mobile version, and to be honest, I do think it is a little bit of a waste of money bothering getting until they update that software itself. So for me, that does mean if my laptop dies and I want to use the library computer, I have the same problem with Anki Web as I do with the mobile version. The software is just not updated and not as good as the downloadable Anki, and you'll find most library computers you cannot download it because it interferes with the computer, so you have to use the web version, which I personally do not get on with. And the final category is workflow and actually using it, which Quizlet is very straightforward. It tells you how to make the folders, it tells you how to do the cards, play the games. From the minute you download it and start using it, it's very clear on what you should be doing and how to lay it out, and it helps that it automatically looks very friendly. Whereas when you first start using Anki, I do think you need a few videos and a bit of time to get the hang of it. However, once you have got the hang of it and understand understand how to make the decks in different subjects on Anki, I think it is a lot more intuitive and easy to use than Quizlet. All of my decks are very clearly organised, and because of the minimalistic style of the homepage, it means it's so straightforward for me to see what is due, what I still need to learn, how far I am with my revision. It also gives you really cool things like a little pie charts to see how many of your cards you've actually got through. And I just think the simplicity of it, when you have so many cards like I do, makes it seem a lot less overwhelming than the style of Quizlet, and feel like you have thousands and thousands of decks. Because you can bury and toggle them all in Anki, you don't even need to see how many decks you have, and you can do, say, the whole of one subject at a time and change things around a lot more easily than Quizlet. So for me, the workflow on Anki is the best one because it's set up purely for efficiency, whereas Quizlet is a much friendlier way of doing it, but not as effective as the Anki system. So as you can see, they both definitely have their pros and cons. However, for me, Anki is the clear winner for your productivity and the most efficient flashcard making app out there. It definitely takes more time than Quizlet to get your head around it to begin with, but for me it is worth it. It's just so clever and a brain in itself, and really helps me with medical school and just achieving my best to learn these flashcards. But before you get anywhere, I need to tell you the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to using flashcards and why they're not working. So first of all, when you're making these cards, it's very easy to forget the bigger picture and the bigger concepts that don't necessarily fit onto a card. So you cannot solely use flashcards as your only revision method. Something I think works really well along the side is making big brainstorms and mind maps of the topic areas. So say for me, take a deck such as endocrinology, I will then break it up in a mind map into the different conditions themselves and all of the symptoms, etc. So I can see exactly what is going on, as well as learning the details, which is what flashcards are fantastic for. Secondly, it's not actually organising your decks effectively. So for me, now I'm learning the conditions, I find it really important to have all of the conditions as separate decks. Whereas if you're doing a module, it might be really important to break it into different lectures. This is again so you can get the actual concepts before you start learning the details and get yourself really confused. Some people rave about throwing everything into these giant decks, but I do think for most things that gets very confusing. And if you choose to do that, you can still do that by dragging your little subdecks into one and revising from them. But having them broken up to begin with is absolutely crucial, and do not fall into that trap. And lastly, do not try to cram absolutely everything onto your flashcards. There is going to be so much information at university or whatever you are learning, and picking out those key details rather than splurting the entire lecture onto flashcards is really important for efficiency, else you are literally going to end up with thousands of cards that no one could learn. So there we are, that is my verdict on why I think Anki and flashcards are the best. Comment below how you're getting along with flashcards, or whether you have a different method which is more effective for you. I would love to know. But anyway, I hope you found this really helpful, and I'll see you all so soon. Bye!